Anxiety and depression is something that causes pain for people all over the world. In this scene from Inside Out, we get a very clear example of how people can get stuck, avoiding their emotions, and start to experience things such as intense anxiety or deep depression. The film Inside Out depicts a young girl struggling with a traumatic experience of moving home. This movie very accurately describes why people get anxious in this world and why we need to be allowed to be upset and uncomfortable even in public sometimes. In a scene from Inside Out, Riley has a situation where she is called on to talk about her life. She feels okay remembering her old feelings until she reaches the point where she realizes that her happy life that she knows of is gone. In that moment, she needs to embrace sadness to help cleanse that moment, but instead, because of happiness struggling with sadness, she gets caught in place where those feelings remain unresolved.
We used to play tag and stuff.
Cool Kids must spring at 3 o'clock.
No.
Did you see that? Look!
Oh, no.
They're judging us!
Somebody help me!
Joy, no! That's a core memory!
Stop it! Let's
Wait!
go.
It is never nice to have to cry in public, but sometimes when we experience a traumatic event, we need to get upset, scream, cry, or whatever to reach closure on that situation. As a result of not getting closure, Riley becomes jaded and scared to talk to anyone, in fear of having to experience the uncomfortable feeling of being emotional and upset in public again. Therefore, many people who suffer from anxiety, and particularly social anxiety, find themselves in this kind of trap, trying to avoid those feelings again and again, and so they get anxious. In order to release the panic, the person needs to heal that trauma. They need to feel okay with being themselves, no matter how vulnerable that is. Once we have time to grieve and we feel supported, it is easier to again embrace happy thoughts.
Behavioral and emotional disorders in children. Childhood mental and developmental disorders encompass neurodevelopmental, emotional, and behavioral disorders that have broad and serious adverse impacts on psychological and social well-being. Children with these disorders require significant additional support from families and educational systems. The disorders frequently persist into adulthood. These children are more likely to experience a compromised developmental trajectory, with increased need for medical and disability services, as well as increased risk of contact with law enforcement agencies. The discussion to the following 5 conditions: childhood anxiety disorders, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, conduct disorder, autism, and intellectual disability, intellectual developmental disorder. Anxiety disorders are characterized by excessive or inappropriate fear, with associated behavioral disturbances that impair functioning, APA 2013. Children with anxiety disorders have clinical symptoms, such as excessive anxiety, severe physiological anxiety symptoms, behavioral disturbances, such as avoidance of feared objects, and associated distress or impairment. ADHD is a neurodevelopmental disorder characterized by inattention and disorganization, with or without hyperactivity impulsivity, causing impairment of functioning, APA 2013.
Between 2 different realities, elation and depression. Although there are many variations of bipolar disorder, let's consider a couple. Type 1 has extreme highs alongside the lows, while Type 2 involves briefer, less extreme periods of elation, interspersed with long periods of depression. For someone seesawing between emotional states, it can feel impossible to find the balance necessary to lead a healthy life. Type 1's extreme highs are known as manic episodes, and they can make a person range from feeling irritable to invincible. But these euphoric episodes exceed ordinary feelings of joy. causing troubling symptoms like racing thoughts, sleeplessness, rapid speech, impulsive actions, and risky behaviors. Without treatment, these episodes become more frequent, intense, and take longer to subside. The depressed phase of bipolar disorder manifests in many ways: a low mood, dwindling interest in hobbies, changes in appetite, feeling worthless or excessively guilty, sleeping either too much or too little, restlessness or slowness, or persistent thoughts of suicide. Worldwide, about 1 to 3% of adults experience the broad range of symptoms that indicate bipolar disorder.
Depression is a disorder that afflicts over 10% of the world's population, but we as a society know little about it. Stereotypes tell us that depressed people are weak, unless they happen to be a tortured artist. It can be difficult to understand depression because it's invisible. It's a disorder defined by thoughts, behaviors, and feelings, rather than obvious symptoms like vomiting, rashes, or fever. Those who have experienced depression are all too familiar with comments from misguided friends such as "snap out of it" or "just get up and do something." Even those with depression might have a hard time understanding what they are experiencing, and they often blame themselves for not being able to snap out of it. To understand what depression really is, we need to talk about symptoms. First of all, depression has symptoms related to how someone feels. These symptoms include nearly constant feelings of sadness, anger, guilt, or hopelessness. Next, there are symptoms related to behavior. They include social withdrawal, a lack of energy, low motivation, poor concentration, sleep problems, or significant changes in appetite. Finally, symptoms related to thoughts include poor self-esteem, thoughts of suicide, and loss of interest in regular activities.
Dissociation is a defense mechanism where you unconsciously push away conflicting or threatening emotions and compartmentalize feelings so that you don't have to deal with them. Within the umbrella of dissociative symptoms, there are two that help categorize the experience: detachment dissociation and compartmentalization dissociation. Detachment dissociation refers to feeling like you have been taken out of your body. Compartmentalization dissociation refers to when your mind pushes aside distressing moments or experiences. This usually results in memory loss. With that said, here are 5 signs you may be experiencing dissociation. Number 1, memory loss. Memory loss is a common symptom of dissociation. You may find yourself at work or school, but unable to remember how you got there. Memory loss is one of the quickest symptoms to identify because it's obvious. The main reason memory loss goes hand in hand with dissociation is because your brain cannot handle whatever is going on, so it switches to autopilot. Dissociation pulls you outside of your body. Hence, it's difficult for you to remember what happens around you if you're not there. But these moments of dissociation don't always occur when we are frightened or distressed. They could sometimes happen while you're doing something. Number 2, derealization. Derealization is another symptom of dissociation. It sometimes feels like a dream where things are colorless, dull, or blurry. Derealization is distressing and can cause anxiety, but it's common for those with anxiety, depression, and other mental illnesses. However, derealization differs from other psychotic disorder symptoms in the sense that there is a degree of awareness. You are aware of reality and the feeling that distances you from it.
Did you know that an average of 35% of adolescent girls engage in crash dieting, fasting, self-induced vomiting, or take diet pills or laxatives? Even more frightening is the fact that 42% of first through third grade girls have an outspoken desire of being thinner. Hello, I'm Dr. Elba Iglesias. I'm the Medical Director of Adolescent Medicine at Joe DiMaggio Children's Hospital. The first thing every parent must know about eating disorders is that this is an issue that requires medical attention, and it not only affects girls, but boys too. How can a parent know if this is happening within their household? Here are 5 signs your child may have an eating disorder. If your child starts showing concerns for weight, food, labels, or dieting, this is an early sign that when treated in time and with professional help can avoid significant damage and long-term consequences. It's common to see an increase in anxiety in a child or adolescent who's developing an eating disorder. Anxiety often follows with weight loss and can be both a precursor to or a byproduct of anorexia. Avoidance of mealtime or plans involving food, change in behaviors around mealtime, or withdrawal from friends and social activities are also key indicators that an eating disorder might be in process. More clear signs would be abuse of laxatives, diuretics, diet pills, or self-induced vomiting. Also, a change in their dressing habits, such as oversized clothing to cover the body or revealing clothes to flaunt weight loss. Unusual food behaviors, such as cutting food into tiny pieces, using large quantities of condiments, subtly insisting on using particular spoons, forks, cups, or plates, are traits of teenagers who suffer from anorexia.
Many of us have our own unique habits and rituals that we carry out on a daily basis, like carrying around a lucky penny or avoiding cracks on a sidewalk. But for people with obsessive-compulsive disorder, those innocent rituals take a different form, often causing distress and interfering with daily activities. Obsessive-compulsive disorder, or OCD, is a severe and often debilitating neuropsychiatric disorder that affects approximately 3% of the population. Due to the nature of its symptoms, it's largely depicted in a stereotypical manner in the media, and in everyday life, people often refer to their overly meticulous behavior as OCD. But being overly neat, specific in the way you do things, and wanting your house to always be spotless does not mean you have OCD. OCD is characterized by severe, persistent, and unwanted thoughts, urges, and images that come in the form of obsessions and compulsions. Obsessions are extremely disturbing and pervasive thoughts that interfere with everyday life. Compulsions are ritualistic behaviors or mental acts that are performed repeatedly in an attempt to relieve the anxiety or stress that obsessions tend to create. Compulsions sometimes, but not always, follow the obsessions.
You know someone who is overly suspicious of everything? What about someone who thinks that everyone has malevolent intentions? Patterns of persistent distrust and suspicion are characteristic of what is known as paranoid personality disorder. So here are 7 signs of paranoid personality disorder. 1. They suspect that others will harm them. Even something minor can cause a person with paranoid personality disorder to feel that they might be a subject of harm. Say they accidentally forget to say hi back to their coworker at work. Now, they may be kept up all night because they're worried that their coworker will harm them during their sleep for this mistake. As a result, they feel extremely distressed and worried to the point that it significantly impairs their functioning. 2. They doubt the trustworthiness of their friends and coworkers. Another trait of paranoid personality disorder is the unjustified doubts about their social circle. For example, at work, they might be paranoid over the notion that their coworkers are conspiring together to frame them as a horrible employee when there is no evidence to prove it. Furthermore, they can interpret a simple hi from an acquaintance at the grocery store as a plot to frame them for murder. Their typical day between work and errands is filled with worries that people are out to get them. Number 5, they hold grudges. People with paranoid personality disorder often hold grudges for a very long time. They feel that any mistake made against them is a permanent attack on their character, which reinforces their paranoia. For example, someone may have accidentally spilled coffee on their desk one morning at work, and as a result, they would despise that coworker for days, months, or even years. Number 6, they think that everything is an attack on their character. For people with paranoid personality disorder, many mistakes are viewed to be an attack on their character, and it's something they must quickly and angrily defend. They think that their character has been wronged in some way, even if there's no clear indication of how they arrived at that conclusion. When someone makes a simple mistake, like bumping into them in the hallway, they may respond angrily to that person. And number 7, they are suspicious about the fidelity of their partner. Not only is the work quality significantly impaired in people with paranoid personality disorder, but so is their relationships. They have a persistent suspicion about the faithfulness of their partner. They think that their partner is cheating on them and can't get the thought out of their heads. There might be loads of evidence against this thinking, but when you have paranoid personality disorder, the suspicion won't leave you alone.
Post-traumatic stress disorder is an anxiety disorder that occurs after the individual has experienced a traumatic event in their lives. Depending on the severity of the event, the trauma can range from mild to intense. I've recently had personal experiences with mild PTSD due to complicated family dynamics. I'm still in the process of healing, but on this journey of moving forward, I want to spread awareness and explore the different types of PTSD with all of you. Whether you're still battling PTSD after many years or have a fresh emotional wound, know that everything you've endured up to this point is still worth fighting. After this video, please be sure to also check out our video on how to cope with it.
Yourself out with friends. You're at your favorite restaurant waiting to be served. Suddenly, you notice people are watching you. You begin to hear people whisper your name. You know they're about to do something. Your friends don't notice that you're all about to be harmed. You mention what's happening to your friends, and they're confused. You have to make them understand quickly before something bad happens. If you've experienced something like this, it could be psychosis. Did you know that a little over 3% of all people will experience psychosis at some point in their lives? That's over 11 million people in the United States alone. In any given year, about 100,000 teens and young adults will experience psychosis.
Schizophrenia was first identified more than a century ago, but we still don't know its exact causes. It remains one of the most misunderstood and stigmatized illnesses today. So let's walk through what we do know, from symptoms to causes and treatments. Schizophrenia is considered a syndrome, which means it may encompass a number of related disorders that have similar symptoms but varying causes. Every person with schizophrenia has slightly different symptoms, and the first signs can be easy to miss. Subtle personality changes, irritability, or a gradual encroachment of unusual thoughts. Patients are usually diagnosed after the onset of psychosis, which typically occurs in the late teens or early 20s for men and the late 20s or early 30s for women. A first psychotic episode can feature delusions, hallucinations, and disordered speech and behavior. These are called positive symptoms, meaning they occur in people with schizophrenia but not in the general population.